Alright, this is the method I like to use for packaging and shipping Hoya cuttings. You'll have to vary it somewhat depending on the type and the size of the leaves. This is a Hoya mini bell, and this is a Pubicalix silver pink, and these are wooded. And one of the first things I like to do is get a plastic plant marker and put the name of it on it, of the plant on it, and I do it on both sides. So, and I'll put that in the bag with each one. That way the person who receives it will have a good positive identification and a marker they can put in the pot that they put their plant in, so they don't have to go through that extra step. I have received cuttings that weren't labeled, and so I have a number of Hoyas. I don't know what they are. So to me, identification is a really important step. Now the first thing you want to do is get you a quart-sized Ziploc storage bags, and I use 2 bags for each plant, as you will see momentarily. Paper towel for each plant. Some water. Let me grab some water here. Now I put water in a plastic container and let it stand overnight to let the chlorine outgas. So the first thing you're going to want to do, if it's a rooted plant, is remove most, if not all, of the soil around the roots, and do this kind of carefully. I start at the top because that's the area least likely to have much in the way of roots, and then I very gently crush the soil and just kind of shake the roots off. You don't necessarily have to remove all of the soil, and it's probably a good idea to not remove all of it, but you want to get the majority of it off because this is going to be in a very small container. So this is a silver pink, and then you take your paper towel. Don't use a napkin, or I mean, you can use napkins, but don't use Kleenex or something that's going to turn to mush in the shipping process. Now you don't have to leave the leaves out. I'm just doing that because I have the space to do it. And then just pour a little water on it. And you want the water to be at what we call field capacity, where if you were to squeeze it really hard, you might be able to get a drop of water out, but you don't want it dripping. So you just want to keep these damp, because they're going to be in an airtight container so that they're not going to dehydrate. I've shipped cuttings like this that were in the mail for 3 to 4 weeks, and they did just fine. So, and then after you zipped it, you can see there's some air in there, not a lot, but I like enough so that when you fold it over, it's got a bubble. And this may actually be a little bit too much for the method I'm going to be using for shipping this one. But this bubble helps protect the leaves and the stems from getting crushed. So there's that one. And then I'm going to put it in a second bag, and I'll put the marker in with it here. You can put the marker in the first bag if you want, but I like to do it this way. And with this one, you don't need as much excess air, so you can squeeze most of the excess air out. But again, you want to be able to fold it in half so it'll fit in the envelope. If you're going to use an envelope, which I am in this case. In this case, I have some mini bells that have peduncles on them, and hopefully these are rooted. So I'm going to just dig one of them up. Hopefully not do too much damage to the root system. Nah, we're good. Okay. So again, I'm going to wrap that in paper towel. Now, if you have a really long one like this, you can fold it over inside the bag, but don't fold it over inside the paper towel unless it's, well, just don't do it, because it's, see, now that's too much water, so I'm going to squeeze the excess out. There, that's about right. That's probably still a little bit too much, but it'll be okay. You don't want them drowning, because again, they're going to be in an airtight container and there's not going to be any moisture escaping. Now, as I fold this, I'm carefully maneuvering the vine down so that it's inside the fold. Hope I'm getting all of this in camera. Now the double Ziploc bag just eliminates any chance that it's going to leak in the shipping process. Now if you have big plants with big leaves that are crushable and you don't want to do this, what I'm going to do, you can use a box. But in this case, I'm going to use an envelope. Alright, so I've got a pre-addressed envelope, and you can just slip these in the envelope. And the Ziploc bags will act as pretty much all of the... Oh, there's too much air in this one. I am not going to be able to get that in the envelope. So I'm going to let a little bit of the air out. Do that one a little bit. There we go. That's better. Fold it over and then zip it off and stick it in the envelope. So there I've gotten 2 cuttings ready to mail out. That still may be a little bit too much air, but let's see if I can't make that work. Again, if your cuttings are too big or you're worried about crushing a leaf, then use a box or a bigger envelope. But I find that most of the time, this kind of envelope, if it's marked fragile and imperishable, it'll be fine. I've shipped a lot of them this way, and almost always they've come through fine. I've only had one person complain, and they just insisted that I send more in a box, which I was happy to do, but yeah, I feel it was unnecessary. They said some of the leaves were crushed in one of the plants that I shipped, and a cutting, especially a rooted cutting, will survive if leaves get crushed. It'll grow new leaves. It's not going to kill your plant. It's just not as pretty. So that's the method I use for bagging them up and getting them ready to send off.